of this world.
I said, please, leave me be.
Restless places.
It scared me to death.
Where the dead walk among us. In foreboding opera houses.
I grabbed her hand and we booked it out the door. We were terrified.
Frightening manor homes.
I thought I was buying the house of my dreams. I could not believe. I was horrified.
And fearsome castles.
It was like it was coming from the depths of hell.
These are the most terrifying places. A gilded old theater, hounded by the victims of a grisly disaster.
My heart stopped breathing. My stomach had a rock in it. I mean, we were just terrified.
The moment that Heather and I saw the chair move, we immediately felt the need to leave.
When I seen it, I got chilled, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And it felt like the temperature just dropped 30 degrees in here.
For over a century, Michigan's Upper Peninsula was copper country, and its capital was the boom town of Calumet. Today, Calumet is a ghost town, but not in the way you'd expect.
Copper was discovered here in the mid-1800s, and by the later 1800s, people discovered there's a buck to be made here.
To showcase Calumet's mighty economy, the mine bosses built a majestic opera house.
Construction of the theater was completed in 1900 and was opened to the public in March of that year.
The glory days soon faded as the mines began to dry up.
In 1913, there was a labor struggle as far as better working conditions, as far as better pay, and a strike ensued.
On Christmas Eve of 1913, a charity event for the striking workers was held at the nearby Italian Hall Social Club.
By the time you got to the harsh winters and you rolled around to the holiday season and Christmas, times were tough for these families at that point.
But the holiday cheer was short-lived.
So in the midst of, this joyful event on Christmas Eve, at some point in time, it was reported somebody yelled, "Fire!" Which, you're on the second floor of this building, and there's only one way out, created a panic. They're all trying to escape from one exit at the bottom of the stairs, and you've got that huge mass of humanity in a panic trying to get out one door. Sadly, at the end of this occurrence, over 70 people lost their lives. Almost 60 of them were children, and they were trampled to death.
The Italian Hall no longer stands. The narrow doorway where so many people perished has been preserved as a grim memorial. But many believe that the dead victims themselves are still here too, not at the doorway, but across the street at the theater.
Victims of the Italian Hall were brought here to the Calumet Theater, so in reality, the Calumet Theater became a makeshift morgue.
From the onset, it became clear there was something off about the chain of events that led to the disaster.
The real tragedy here is it was really kind of a senseless thing that should have never happened because there was no fire. There are all kinds of stories and rumors and speculation as far as who may have been behind the cry of fire. Many believe that it was the mine bosses themselves trying to get back at the miners, just trying to make a point that, hey, we're still in control here, and, hey, if you want to go on strike, well, we'll show you, kind of a thing.
Some believe the dead now wander Calumet Theater looking for the culprit behind their demise.
The spirits here are not at peace because they never caught whoever yelled fire with the Italian Hall disaster.
You can feel the spirits have lingered here. I guess watching you would be part of it. It was late afternoon in the summer, and we were closing up the theater for tours.
We were just turning off all the lights and locking up and all of that. And while we were at the breaker booth downstairs, by the box office. We were turning off lights, and the only light left in the theater was the ghost light that is usually on stage.
As I flipped the last switch, our eyes adjusted for that 1 second to the darkness and the ghost light. And the chair moved from the left side of the stage over to the right side by about 2 feet. My heart stopped. I stopped breathing. My stomach had a rock in it. I mean, we were just terrified.
The moment that Heather and I saw the chair move, we immediately felt the need to leave.
Jenna and I looked at each other, huge wide eyes. I grabbed her hand and we booked it out the door. We were terrified.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and to this day I still can't explain it. It was definitely terrifying.
It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We were setting up for a music show that came in and performed that night. And I just happened to look up. Caught it out of the corner of my eye. I looked up and I seen the full body shadow go from left to right in the second balcony. And just disappeared into thin air. When I seen it, I got chilled and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And it felt like the temperature just dropped 30 degrees in here. I went up to the second balcony to look to see if anybody was up there, and there wasn't anybody else up there. There wasn't anybody in the light room. There was just nobody up there.
The 1913 catastrophe devastated a small town, leaving behind pain and agony that has lasted a century.
There is still a definite, deep connection between that tragedy in 1913 and to present-day residents of Calumet.
Someone yelled fire, and 73 people on Christmas Eve were trampled to death. I mean, it impacted this town beyond belief.
The victims of the Christmas Eve massacre continue to haunt the theater and have shown no signs of giving up the act.
There are moments that shock us.
He killed her.
That change the way we feel about what we do.
Dark secrets.
Are you kidding me? Did you just hear footsteps?
Have you always been here?
Sounds female.
That no longer want to stay hidden.
Who's down here?
We just want to help this family.
This is a 400-year mystery.
That is a twist I did not expect.
New series of Kindred Spirits, Wednesdays on Travel Channel.
In a rusty rail yard, a rolling coffin quakes with the aftershocks of a tragedy.
I won't work in it. I'll work on anything else. You can have me do anything you want, but I won't work in that car.
You think of the worst horror film that you ever saw and magnify it.
Basically boiled them alive.
On the banks of the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, Ohio, is the Midwest Railway Preservation Society, a graveyard for historic train cars and home to one known as the Death Car.
What we do is we find old railroad equipment. We do all kinds of restoration, from rebuilding them, getting them back to use.
Trains were once the gold standard for long-distance travel.
Everybody from big businessmen, movie stars, baseball players, right down to just your neighbor next door rode the rails.
For decades, the railways ran on steam. Steam engines could haul both freight and passenger cars and could reach speeds of up to 125 miles per hour.
This is a Pullman coach. It was built in 1934.
While this car looks to be in perfect condition, it was involved in one of the most horrific railroad accidents of its day.
It was August 30th in 1943. It ran from Hoboken, New Jersey to Buffalo, New York. And that's what it was doing on that particular train that day. And on this particular day, they knew they were going to be 20 minutes late. It's a little bit of drama because back in that day, the railroads didn't like passenger cars to be late. You weren't late on the railroad. And the engineers took it a matter of personal pride that they did not bring their train in late.
The engineer did everything he could to make up the lost time.
They were doing real good until they got to Wayland, New York. In Wayland, New York, at the time of the incident, you had a local freight train switching.
The freight train needed to cross the main line tracks. They figured they had plenty of time.
The crew down the track thought they had 20 minutes to clear because this train was running like 20 minutes behind.
First inclination that there was something wrong was he heard the whistle around the bend, and he knew he was in trouble. The engineer was doing about 55 miles an hour when they struck. And when they struck, it was a side swipe.
On impact, the passenger train ripped open a long gash in the freight engine's steam boiler. The first 5 cars of the passenger train derailed.
This car stayed upright, came to rest right next to the other locomotive.
The ruptured freight engine started venting scalding hot steam.
So all that escaping steam just blew right into the coach.
In a steam locomotive, you're going to get at least 375 degrees or so.
Basically boiled them alive. That accident was very horrific.
Think of the worst horror film that you ever saw and magnify it. Take that superheated steam down into your lungs, and it just parboils your lungs right there. 26 people died as a result of that incident.
The car itself suffered little damage and spent another 20 years in operation before retiring to its current home for restoration.
When we brought the car in to do some work on it, and we brought it into the roundhouse, and that's when things were a little weird.
At first, they didn't know the dark story of the death car, but would soon find out.
People felt legs getting grabbed, people hearing screaming, people would see shadows, slamming sounds, glass breaking sounds. People see full apparitions here.
The association periodically runs the car on day trips for visitors. Sometimes victims from the accident tag along.
The woman that is here, she whispers in people's ears to get out. And our surmise is that she's trying to warn people to get out because of the steam.
Many believe the passengers linger behind, trying to prevent the accident from happening again.
I came in on a Saturday morning, a little early before everyone else did.
To prepare for the day's trip, Alex changed into his vintage uniform.
I opened up the windows in the car just to get some airflow moving. Went into the women's lounge area, which is where I was going to be working that time. All the windows just slammed shut at once. I thought, okay, maybe someone is here just trying to play a practical joke on me. So I opened up all the windows, went to our tool room to get all the necessary tools that I needed for the job. When I came back, all the windows were closed again. When the accident occurred, it was, I think, a summer day, so the windows were open. So I'm assuming because of that, they wanted the windows closed to try to help protect them.
The ghost passengers of the death car seem to be trapped on this train for eternity. and hell-bent on holding off their truly horrific final moments.
I won't work on it. I'll work on anything else. You can have me do anything you want, but I won't work in that car.
They may be staying here because they have unfinished business. They think that, you know, eventually the train is going to get to wherever they were going.
Even death cannot contain the murderous spirits of two notorious bayou butchers.
This is their place, and we're the visitors, and they will let you know quickly who it belongs to.
Never have I ever experienced that fear before.
And as soon as that happened, I just got up and I said, I have to go. I have to go, I have to go, I have to go, and I just ran out.
Down in the swamps of DeRidder, Louisiana, a century-old lockup now imprisons menacing spirits, the Gothic Jail.
The Gothic Jail was built in 1914. The lumber barons, whenever they would settle through these areas, they would build ornate buildings. And one of the things that they decided they would build in this settlement was a courthouse and a jail.
The jail was built to contain everyone from petty criminals and thieves to violent offenders and killers.
Some of the prisoners here were the worst of the worst. In August of 1926, two locals held a taxi cab driver from here in town. They took him out from town, brutally murdered him by hitting him with a tire iron, slitting his throat and stabbing him in the heart.
The assailants, Joe Genna and Moulton Brasseau, became the Gothic Jail's newest inmates.
The two men were brought back here. They went on trial. It was a very public trial. Everyone came out to witness it. They were sentenced to be hung here within the walls of our jail.
The Gothic Jail had no gallows. The hangman had to improvise.
The jail has a very unique spiral stairwell that runs up through it that actually the hangings were done from.
The thing about this hanging that occurred here at the jail was that all the cells surround where the gallows were built here in our jail, so any inmate that was in house would have had to witness the hangings. Maybe a little grim reminder of what could have happened to them if they kept their life of crime that they were on.
Genna was pronounced dead after hanging for 11 minutes. Brasseau took 12. But it seems that wasn't the end of these two killers.
After the hangings, the jailer kept the noose in his office for years. And then he eventually took the noose home because he would come to work and find the noose laying outside of his office door. It would be moved whenever he'd come in the morning, it'd be laying, you know, outside of his door, in the middle of the gallows, different places.
Since becoming caretaker, Lori has occupied the jailer's old office and worries Genna and Brasseau view her as the new warden.
One afternoon I came to work and I walked to the office door, and laying in the middle of the office floor was a perfectly wound noose made out of twine. It was twine and lint that looked like it had perfectly wound itself in a circular pattern. And the sense of dread and fear overwhelmed me so bad that I threw what I had down in my hands and immediately left the building. Never have I ever experienced that fear before. I won't come in here alone at night any longer.
The last inmates were moved out in 1984. Today, the Gothic Jail is open for tours.
One Saturday evening, my daughter and I come on a lantern tour for the Gothic Jail.
It's like as soon as you walk in, you just feel like your hairs are standing up, you feel chills, like you're being watched all the time.
We were in this very cell, sitting and just talking amongst ourselves, just the two of us. She jumps up, starts running past me in tears, and I ask her, "What's wrong? Where are you going?" And she just said, "I have to get out of here."
It felt like something had grabbed my face, and a man was whispering in my ear. But the weird thing about it is that I couldn't hear exactly what he was saying, but I knew that he was like whispering something into my ear. So it was very strange. And as soon as that happened, I just got up and I said, "I have to go. I have to go, I have to go, I have to go." And I just ran out.
Genna and Rousseau were the only men ever executed at the Gothic jail. A century later, their holding cells may be unlocked, but their savage spirits remain forever imprisoned within these fearsome walls.
These were not nice guys that couldn't live in regular society. This became their home, and some believe they never left.
One thing people should understand is that this is their place, and we're the visitors, and they will let you know quickly who it belongs to.
A stately Victorian mansion hides a restless and ruthless resident.
It was supposed to be our dream house. There are times where I'm so uncomfortable here that I just feel like I need to get away.
There's definitely times in the house when I feel very much not alone. I feel like I'm being followed, and it is terrifying. I've had to leave before.
I would definitely say this is one of the scariest experiences I've ever had.
The town of Gasport in upstate New York is home to Greystone Manor, a charming old house permanently occupied by a powerful dark spirit.
The house was built in 1865 by Curtis Root. He was a very wealthy horse trader. I know during the Civil War, he and his family, they used to buy and sell horses to both sides, north and south, so they made a lot of money that way.
Curtis Root was a flashy and eccentric millionaire. His home and his horses were meant to impress. But Root would be cut down by the very beasts that built his fortune.
Curtis Root was taking one of his racehorses named Playboy over into the town, and he was walking along this one part of the canal, and the train tracks were there, and a train came by and spooked the horse. And he sort of reared up and crushed Curtis Root. He got to the house and went upstairs, told his wife he was fine. He thought bed rest would help. So he was in bed for a good couple weeks, thought he was getting better, but he actually probably had internal bleeding from what it sounds like, because then he actually ended up dying.
The mansion was passed down through Curtis's children and then sat vacant for a number of years until Heather Madison and her husband Robert stumbled upon the property.
My husband and I were recently married a couple years ago, and we wanted to move from where we were living.
Their run-ins with the ghost of Greystone began on day one.
I thought I was buying the house of my dreams. This is the house I always dreamed of. And then we moved in. I could not believe. I was horrified.
Since we've moved in, we've gotten more and more activity, and it's kind of increasing as we go along.
I was here working on one of the walls in the room that we decided to put up to divide the bathroom. As I was working on that wall, I kept seeing shadows. It kept blocking out the light of the back door, because one of the doorways that we were blocking off led out to the backyard. But then all of a sudden my arm started to burn. And this fine scratch started to appear on my arm. I was just watching it. And it felt like almost like not a cigarette burn, but like, you know, embers if you're at a campfire where like an ash hits your arm, and it was like the whole thing was burning. It started puffing up from the inside, and it was the finest line. It was really strange. It wasn't a cat scratch. It was like a perfect line, and it started getting redder and redder, and it was like puffing up from the inside.
Heather and Robert attribute these experiences to the house's original owner.
I believe that Curtis Root is still resides here, the spirit of Curtis Root.
Curtis Root was known for having a big personality. He was very social. He was involved in politics, but very much a ladies' man. Every time there's women in the house, almost always someone gets touched, inappropriately a lot of times.
Feels like a strong male presence that's around.
People who sleep overnight say they'd see a man just standing in the, what we call the green room, which we later found out was the room he actually died in.
There are times when I'm so uncomfortable in my own house that I just feel like I need to get away.
The sinister forces haunting Greystone Manor became so unbearable that the Madisons could no longer stand being in the house alone.
We've been operating as a B&B for approximately a year now. We've had guests that have shown up, experienced something so scary that they dropped their bags and ran.
I'm from the area, and a friend of mine told me about Greystone Manor. Two of my girlfriends and I came together, and my girlfriend, Renee, had been here previously. My girlfriend, Debbie, had not.
Heather greets all new guests with a brief tour and history of the house.
I had to be about 10 minutes into her telling us about the mansion and Mr. and Mrs. Root and that. That's when I started feeling like somebody touching my hair or my neck, and I was getting uncomfortable. And then when we finally started the tour, again, I felt fine until we got into this front room where there's animals hanging on the walls. I couldn't walk in there. Every time I walked in, I felt nauseous, so I'd step back. So we go into the red room, just sitting there relaxing on the bed, and all of a sudden I felt really warm. And I started laughing uncontrollably. And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I couldn't stop laughing. Then I burped. And she says, what was that? And it tasted and smelled like bourbon. She goes, "You smell like alcohol." Now, I hadn't had a drink in a week, at least. She kept asking me stuff like, "What's wrong?" And I said, I want to get out of here. I tried getting off the bed. I almost fell. They had me sit at the top of the stairs. They brought me water. I couldn't focus. When I was here for the tour, I had a necklace that I wore. When I left here, my necklace was gone. To this day, I have not found it. We've searched my girlfriend's car. Heather has searched her couch, the bed, everything, and it still has not been returned. I would definitely say this is one of the scariest experiences I've ever had.
The Madisons believe Curtis Root remains at Greystone and that he is intent on driving them out. A treasured medieval landmark with a dungeon full of dark secrets.
Warwick Castle has the reputation of being extremely haunted. It was coming from the depths of hell. I started going through the photos and I noticed that there was a figure, but I know there was no one there.
Just outside of Birmingham, at the very heart of England, stands a majestic medieval structure, Warwick Castle. This ancient estate is among the country's most cherished landmarks. It's also one of the most haunted.
Warwick Castle was first built in 1068 on the orders of William the Conqueror, so a couple of years after the Battle of Hastings when he got the crown of England.
Warwick Castle was built as a defensive stronghold to protect those inside from the enemies outside. But visitors today see a grand estate with lavish rooms for entertaining.
You see these massive, imposing towers, and you've got the courtyard with the main house and where they would have lived right in the centre.
The castle's reformation was thanks to its 17th century lord, Fulk Grevall.
He completely transformed the castle and he introduced the main house that we have here today, so our staterooms and the living quarters that we have here.
Yet Grevall's time as Earl of Warwick would end in tragedy.
Fulk had written his will, which was found by his manservant,
And unfortunately, the manservant wasn't very happy with what he'd been left in the will, so he took a knife and stabbed Fulk Greville twice. Fulk Greville dies in absolute agony. We have a lot of people that come to the castle and, they say there's a feeling or a sense that something's around them.
I came to Warwick Castle. It was nice to spend my time just slowly wandering around, enjoying the place for myself. I walked into the piano room and there was a female mannequin by the piano and there was a male mannequin in the corner of the room. And the mannequins looked very lifelike. And that's when I felt a really strong, cold, very significant cold breeze just kind of go right past me. And then I heard a knock on the door. I then called out to see if someone was working in the castle who was there, and there was just a moan. But then I went over towards the door, and I knocked on the door, and there was a knock back. And that really freaked me out. So I reached into the door handle, and then I opened the door and realized there was no room behind the door. And I just felt that I was not there on my own. And then I kind of went, okay, that's it now. I want to leave the room. I don't feel very comfortable at all. So as I went to go out the door to open the door, the piano, a couple of notes played on the piano. And I walked away that day firmly believing that it was enough for me to say this place is 100% haunted.
Could this knocking be a sign that Fulk's spirit still lurks these halls?
He'll knock on the walls if he really likes you.
For centuries, Warwick Castle maintained a reputation of being possessed by supernatural entities. 200 years after Fulk's murder, Lady Anne Greville enlisted the help of famed occultist Aleister Crowley to summon her ancestor's spirit.
Crowley had a bit of a reputation. He was well known. Magic, as he called it, was a very unusual thing, and he was certainly one of the sort of more well-known people that were following this trend.
Crowley and Anne Greville performed seances to contact the spirits calling Warwick Castle home.
They would take up residence in the Kenilworth bedroom and perform these seances. Anne had used a technique called automatic writing, which is where you literally write down things that come through to you from the communication.
They made contact with several spirits. She believed these spirits were channeling her and giving her the messages and the secrets of the castle.
Although Crowley died hours away from Warwick Castle, it seems that he too has been drawn back in the afterlife. Castle visitors claim they've seen Crowley's specter lurking within the Kenilworth bedroom.
I walked around the Kenilworth bedroom for quite some time, taking some pictures and reading some of the signs in the room. When I felt something walk up behind me, and it was a really strong male presence that kind of loomed right over me. I looked around thinking I was going to actually see a person there. But no one else in the room. It wasn't until I started going through the photos and I noticed that there was a figure in the reflection of the plaque. But I know there was no one there. I mean, I turned around. There was absolutely no one else in that room.
The figure captured in the image appears to be Aleister Crowley himself, keeping a watchful eye over the very room in which he attempted to contact the spirit world.
Warwick Castle has a reputation of being extremely haunted, and I definitely think it is. After my experience, I don't have any doubt.
Greville and Crowley are not alone haunting the castle. a more sinister spirit skulks in the deepest, darkest depths.
Warwick Castle has a jail, which is hidden right down the bottom of one of our towers. Prisoners were usually just kept there in really kind of bad conditions. It's dark, it's damp, it's really compact.
Once you were down there, you were thrown down there. You were forgotten and you were treated really, really badly. You probably would have been chained to the wall and just left to rot.
The story goes that prisoners were kept under close guard by a notoriously sadistic jailer who took delight in victimizing his wards. Today, visitors and staff believe his spirit still lurks in these dungeons.
I decided to go to the jail purely because I thought what an amazing photo that would be. The feeling in the room was quite oppressive, quite overpowering to all my senses. And I felt this breath on me, like it completely enveloped me. I could feel it in my hair, on my face, the smell. The smell was like a sulfur, like when you've got a taste of blood in your mouth, that metallic, like battery acid, nasty, horrible. It just stuck with me. It was like a really guttural, like it was coming from the depths of hell. That's how I want to describe it. As I turned around, I was faced with this terrifying figure, so scary to me. Really felt like an overpowering feeling, and as if I was going to get grabbed and shaken, and my legs really felt like they could buckle under me because it took me so by surprise. This actual episode happened to me a number of years ago, and I've never been in that jail since. I've been back to Warwick Castle since. Beautiful place. Why would you not want to come back? I've never been down in the jail. That is a place I will never go in, ever.
For nearly a millennia, Warwick Castle has stood firm as a symbol of English strength. However, these supposedly impenetrable walls are no match for spirits drawn here from the beyond.
Some families can't agree on anything.
So you believe in Loch Ness Monster?
Yes, no, totally.
I don't. Jack Osborne wants his.
Today, adventurous visitors are treated to an epic vista over a land that influenced the world perhaps more than any other.
In a New England town steeped in the occult, a restaurant can't escape the village's ancient curse.
As a city, Salem is probably one of the most haunted cities in America, without question.
I looked up, and when I didn't see myself, I gasped for air, and I don't think I took a breath until she was no longer there.
I really feel strong. There is something here, paranormal-wise.
On the coast of Massachusetts Bay, the town of Salem cannot shake its 3-century-old stain, seeping into a modern-day eatery known as Rockefeller's.
Salem has so many legends and ghost lore associated with it.
Obviously, when I hear the word Salem, it's about witches, the witch hysteria.
19 women and men were executed for alleged witchcraft, an event some believe cursed the town.
Salem is probably the most haunted city in the country, and that's because of what happened in 1692. It left a psychic imprint on the location.
Over a century later, just steps from the site of the Salem witch trials, entrepreneur Daniel Lowe put up this stately brick building, today home to Rockefeller's.
Rockefeller's is an American restaurant established in 2003. I really feel strong. There is something here, paranormal-wise.
There's a whole legend of the Lady in Blue. The Lady in Blue has been spotted by multiple people. According to the story, in 1840, there was a woman wearing blue. She was waiting for her lover, and she had a secret to tell him. The secret was that she was pregnant. When she told him the secret, he flipped. Killed her, and he left her there to die. But then, when her body was there lifeless, he took the body and he buried it in the bowels of the Rockefellers building.
Owner Kevin Marchino had heard strange stories from his staff since the day they opened.
There's been a couple of different stories about cold spots in the restaurant. I've heard a couple of instances of breaking glasses and shouting and things of that nature. So, sitting downstairs in the office one day, we had an old chandelier that we just took down from the dining room. So I got a cousin who's an electrician who said, you know, let me take a look at it, maybe I can rewire it. So it was sitting on the floor in the office for a while, and I was sitting there with one of my chefs, and we were discussing new menu items and whatnot, and after about 5 minutes of talking, this chandelier just started shaking violently, like somebody had the top of it on the hardwood floor, back and forth like this. And at that point, I was like, do you see what's going on? Like, am I not, we both seeing this, right? And he's like, yeah, and we both backed our chairs up a little bit because it was really close to us. So it was interesting, and then it stopped. Came in one morning, the phone rang, it was a reservation for a party of 9, so I wanted to get it in the book right away without forgetting about it. So I ran up the stairs really quickly, put it in the host book, ran back down the bottom of the stairs, and this big steel door was shut right in front of me, which I didn't even know it existed. After inspecting it, it was totally rusted and just shut behind a cabinet where it would not just roll by itself. And then I started playing around with it going, there is no way this door can shut by itself. It's too heavy, it's too rusted, it's too jammed behind a cabinet.
The woman in blue seemed intent on getting people's attention.
So at the end of a busy evening, we go down to the basement where we keep a lot of our stock to grab wine, liquor, beer, to restock the bar for the next morning. And as I'd walk downstairs, I heard screaming. And it sounded as though it was coming through where we keep a lot of the wine and beer. So I opened the door, I looked in, and was searching for the screaming, and it stopped. There was no one there. So I came back out of that area.
Hello?
And along the wall, I saw a shadow moving. So out of curiosity, I kind of followed the shadow. And as I went down the hall, it disappeared. And that's when I got chills. I knew something strange was going on.
One day when I came here in the fall, me and my friend were walking to look for something to eat, and we stumbled upon Rockefellers. So once we got settled and placed our order, I excused myself from my friend, and I said, I'm gonna go to the ladies' room and I'll be right back. On exiting a stall, I was just looking down at my feet, and when I went to look up in the mirror, there was someone there that was not me. And I'm saying, like, in front of me, the woman, I couldn't even see myself, and it was for a split second. When I didn't see myself, I gasped for air, and I literally, I don't think I took a breath until she was no longer there.
The woman in blue remains a restless presence at Rockefeller's, yet another tragic victim of Salem's brutal past.
When I did experience these things, it made me a firm believer.
As a city, Salem is probably one of the most haunted cities in America, without question.
In a city full of ghosts, Rockefeller's has carved out its own space as one of the world's most terrifying places.